Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Esther-Astro-Healing. I took a little bit of break, so now I'm back. And I'm back in with very interesting topic, which is, I don't think there's enough information, especially on the technical side. I'm going to discuss today about Vertex. Vertex in its well-rising sign, how it can be calculated and in which locations on our planet Earth it's almost impossible to get correct vertex calculation, and as well our rising. Now again, vertex, it's not a sign or planetary body. It's a point calculation in our chart, which is need to be really precise. Calculate really depends on latitude and the place you're born on our planet. Really important fated point. We start to use vertex really more in middle of our century. Vedic astrologers and ancient astrologers don't really have much knowledge about because it didn't have a chance to really use and calculate. I'm going to create another video about the 12 signs and 6 houses where the vertex can be found in your chart in what is represent. And then I can explain a little bit in depth, really more about vertex and his importance and crucial point in our chart. Now, one thing I do want to mention, it's not, again, it's the way we have a 5 very important uh, calculative points in our chart, right? We have rising, ascendant, we have descendant. Then we have midheaven, we have MC, IC. We have meridians, we have horizon, and it's all calculative points, right? So it's not astrological body. As well, we do have Rahu and Ketu, which is south and north node. I do believe and I agree with few astrologers that vertex, it's even stronger than Rahu, which is Rahu, it's more familiar to us. We more or less can prevent by working on certain things with vertex. It's almost impossible to avoid. It's a fated point. So, and it's usually represent personal relationship. It's a relationship where we absolutely must meet with certain people, and many times only after the meeting, after we kind of learn our lessons, we recognize it was really fated meeting for us. And it's really important to learn about, for me personally, when I do people chart, especially when I do follow-up charts, I always touch more up on the vertex, and really important if it's been triggered by certain celestial bodies, then it's activated even more, depends on what house it is. I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to share with you the PowerPoint I create. So it's going to have a little bit better understanding for you what I'm referring to. And we're going to start with few points. When the vertex overtakes the power of rising. This video is going to be controversial video, and I hope some astrologers who can watch this video, they're going to rethink the way how they calculate the rising point, and in which cases we absolutely cannot use rising, and in which cases we must use vertex and replace vertex. So the good news, midheaven we always can use. So midheaven is always accurate. As I said about the vertex, it's very fated in destiny. It's represent really fate, destiny, and karma. I'm going to show you where it's located usually in the chart. So you can see this is the vertex. So vertex always located on the right-hand side, never on the left. And what is the right? Right, it's about other people, right? It's right column energy. It's about sharing. It's about to get to other person's shoes and understand what he represents, what his point of view, what his comfort zone, what his security, how I can understand this person. So vertex, and it's always located not just on the right-hand side, it starts from the 5th house, including to the 9. So it's only can be in 5 houses. So it can be only in house number 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Usually most of them personal houses. very personal points, except the sixth house, which is we're going to discuss as well. Now we have both points. We have a vertex and we have anti-vertex. So anti-vertex represent on the left side, which is sharing more, right? Which is another left share. It's about you. Sorry, right? It's sharing, which is about you. It's more familiar. So anti-vertex will give us a lot of information as well, how we can use what's familiar to us in order to be prepared for fated events when it's happened to us. So this is something I'm going to discuss in my other next video. You can watch in probably or tonight or tomorrow. And but today I really want us to touch on the really technical side of the story. So I just want to show you the how it's actually calculate. What is really a vertex in calculating point? It's basically in the angles, right? And this is how the vertex calculate in the chart. And it was when initially one of the astrologers, Andrew Nord, I'm going to explain about the astrologer as well. There's a few astrologers who start to use this point. And this point, when you see ever, usually when you're using most of the software, they provide the information about your vertex. So, but you have to always pay attention. I heard few astrologers, they recommend to people, when you see your vertex on the left-hand side, imagine it is on the left. It's absolutely not correct. By end of this video, you'll understand why it's so wrong. So for example, I have a client from South America sometimes, and their vertex can be appear in the fourth or third house. I don't consider even this vertex. Again, we're gonna discuss this right now in more depth. So let me go to the other point. So what I did here, I create for us, I hope you can use this information for your future if you're gonna really want to understand for your own personal purpose, or if you as astrologer are using vertex. I think this video can really help you to understand a little bit more in which cases we should use vertex and not, right? So to explain in more depth, in very simple and clear formula to calculate in straight vertex and rising point in different geographic latitudes, which is really important. And perhaps to bring more clarity to this very, very important subject and to understand about the alternatives and way to determine the strength of rising point and the strength of vertex based and position of celestial horizon, right, in ecliptic plane, which is really, really important. So vertex is not, like I said, it's not planetary or asteroid. It's a very important calculative point. And the idea, the rising becoming much weaker and not accurate as soon as we're getting away from equator and the vertex much stronger, it's extremely important and crucial for the personal natal chart. I'm going to show you something. So you can see here, I put for you very simple, straightforward formula. And we, if for example, we're very close to equator, it's like, the countries we have, the region, all the South Americans, few, especially, the countries which is much, much closer to the equator, they rising, it's very, very strong. You can see it's 100% strong, and vertex really not available completely. It's not available. There's no possible even calculate, it's zero. Then we're going to a little bit down, we're going to the, to 15 north from the south. And then what we see here, we get into 93, the rising still very strong, and there's no point to use vertex. Now, why I put here the points of 23.5? 23.5, it's exactly 84%, which is exactly, it's a crucial point on our Earth of the, it's exactly the point of Arctic Circle. Okay, so now here it's really stuff starts to become weird, and you will see why. we start to get 16% of vertex, which is again, it's most likely going to get to the third house, which is we cannot use vertex. And rising, it's still very strong, right? So again, but here we have to start to be really, really accurate with the rising, even more. Then we go into 30, which is 70, it's 75% from north. We're going to 25, and then we get into the 50-50. This is when things even more balance, right? So over here on this zone, we can really easily consider both. We can consider rising and vertex, and it's most likely will be very accurate. Now, when we get into the 60%, 60 of north, which is 25%, and we get in only 25% of rising and 75% of vertex. So what it's mean? So we're getting right now closer to the North Pole, which is North Pole. It's very high latitude, right? And it's closer to Norway, Finland, and the Scandinavian region. And again, we need to remember that as more we get in more and more, and again, we have a critical point here, 66.5 north, and we get into 84%. So look at what's happened here with a rising. Rising become unpredictable. So it's only 16% of latitude we can consider rising, and 84 we're getting to the vertex. And then we're going more and more. I'm going to show you right now here at this point. So as soon we get into 90% of to the north, which is 0, we get in 0 rising, and we have very accurate vertex. So what we get in here, so is more we're going to the north side, we start to really consider more vertex. You cannot really consider rising. And I will tell you, I'm going to bring my point to the really where I'm coming from, because the scientist, and this is why it's so important to study astronomy for astrologer, to really understand without science, because if you look to the history of astrology, where really astrology was developed the most, it's really in Middle East or India. There was really no school of thought of astrology really in North, right? There's not much except in some part of Eastern Europe, like Bulgaria, a little bit of, I think, a little bit of west of Ukraine, and a little bit, so that region, but mainly Bulgaria. So not much really of north, right? No, not even part of the Germany, even there was no really development. So therefore, they couldn't even consider not to consider rising. Plus, ancients in many cases couldn't even use rising because a lot of people didn't know the time of the birth. But you really need to be from rich family, really, and to be with your mother for her to remember at the time of your birth. So ancients really relate more and more on the moon, and in some cases in rising. Therefore, they couldn't even consider a population of North Pole in order to understand. And I can explain to you even more. So you can see, so now you can see how rising is becoming much weaker and vertex much stronger. So to say, taking over rising and vice versa, right? So it is so important, especially nowadays, almost every astrologer is based his or her calculation in rising and housing placement on rising only, right? So everyone asking you, what is your rising? So I do have clients who came from northern region, and I have to tell you, I stopped to use the rising, and let me explain to you why. So if someone born close a few degrees to equator, right? Equator, so or any other country around, there's no point to use vertex, right? So we can see because vertex completely weak here. So there's no, but rising, it's very, very strong. Now, the good news, again, that you always can use midheaven, MC and IC. So let's see what chart it's showing, right? So if, for example, individual uh, I would say you can see how the latitude change rising and vertex. So let me give you another example about rising. So in the Arctic Circle, for example, in the city like Rovaniemi, like Finland, right? So let me go to another place. Okay, so I want to show you what's really happening here, right? So you can see the North Pole and you can see the South Pole, right? In North Celestial Pole. So here I'm going to explain to you, and this is the ecliptic. So I'm going to explain to you just a little bit right now you can, so you can understand a little bit better. So let's see that some zodiac, so basically if you look at the North Pole, so you can see the rising can move more than 10 degrees for 1 minute. So if rising move in 1 degree, more than 1 degree in 1 minute, and then suddenly he can jump to 180 degree in 1 second. So what astronomers explain and science, they explain to us that what's happened with rising in these places is jumps so quickly, then it's not even in human understanding of the time. It's even quicker than the light time. So right now you will say, now we have a computer system they can catch, but it's not the point. You can't really catch even these degrees because it's so quick. Then we can't even understand how even to catch the moment of the rising in northern pole. So you know how we say, like in our Malchut dimension, in the level where we live. So in this particular place on Earth, it's impossible because the way how rising behave, he's not stable, and we can even observe or grasp almost like this, like I said, like a speed of the light. This is how quick it's changed. So what it's mean, that some zodiac sign is never even rise in this place. So let me explain again. So just for you to really to understand the point, especially about the rising, I will give you a real example. There's a for example, Finland or Norway. There's a big population there, and they live in a place where their horizon behave completely different. It's literally never have certain zodiac signs, right? So it's jump, for example, it's move 10 degrees for 1 minute, which is it's very quick, and then suddenly it can move up to 180 degrees in a second. So science, they do explain it's almost not in human grasp to understand how quick those degrees can move. It's impossible to catch them, right? Or observe. It's like in the speed of light. So what it means, that some zodiac signs is never even rise, like Pisces or rising, they never exist in those atmosphere, place of our Earth, right? So it's mean the whole population, and it's a big region that lives in this place, in this region, can never have close up to six signs to have accurate six sign. They're really missing, including the houses, right? And it's the houses, the up to six houses completely disappear. So we must to put and emphasize on the vertex, right, and not on rising. So this way, it's really important for astrologers to understand that and not just use mechanically software and calculate people rising. It can be accurate on those, on those atmospheres, on those places. On our, we're talking right now about North Pole. So again, we must to observe the sky. This is the whole idea. This is why, in this case, you have midheaven, you have vertex, and as well moon. Moon can help anywhere where we in latitude, which is it's not balanced, it's going funny, right? When I show you where we have at the midpoint of North Pole, right? And we have a midpoints. This is when we have to start to consider to use really more moon in a sense, and to be more careful how we calculate vertex and rising and ascendant, right? So this is really important. And then you can find the information in ancient astrology. Why? Like I said, because ancients couldn't really connect to that. They were living in places where the latitudes behave much more stable. There was in a full Rakus, they have rising and the ecliptic and and then the celestial equator didn't affect the way how it's affected up to high to north and low to south. And this is why I want to remind us that, even the Holy Zohar, by the way, when it's talking about north, we're talking about we cannot consider rising. It represents Gvura, the judgment column energy. And if you observe people who come from north, they really have a little bit different tikkun, different karmic, um, in a way, assignment. And we can discuss this again in my next video when I'm going to explain more about the houses and how the vertex behave and why it's really important to understand vertex, especially for people who getting closer to the North Pole and to this side of the latitude, right? So um, some of the alternatives and suggestions, what I understood from scientists and astronomers, is to use the inclination of the horizon plane to the ecliptic plane. You understand? So instead to calculate normally, it's literally to use the inclination, which is this is the calculative point, right? Because it's all about the squares of the horizontal plane to the ecliptic plane, and instead of geographic latitude. Okay, so there's another possibility. There's not, I think, there's a few people who working right now on this type of software. One of them I really, really admire. It's David Cochrane. And I really love his work and what he's doing. He's one of the astrologers and scientists who really brought this to our attention more and more about how the rising behave and vertex behave in different polarities. And when suns, we need to remember when sun stayed all day near horizon, right? So horizon, the ecliptic plane, it means there's no inclination between. This is when the rising behave very strange, because sun can stay there in horizon almost like most of the day. I want to read to you what David Cochrane's actually say about this situation, what we right now are discussing. Let me just go further. So here we have, so he's saying basically, so it is why it is almost impossible to have an accurate rising calculation in the North Pole. Like I brought you example about the Rovaniemi in Finland and Svalbard in Norway, the region, the rising moves more than 10 degrees in 1 minute. Then it jumped again to up to 180 degree in a second. So it's like whoosh, you can't even catch. This is how quick. You understand how important to have this information and to be very careful how we're using the rising. And then local population can have Libra as a ascendant, which is Libra, and Aries can stay there up to 4 to 6 hours, and the other 6 houses placements completely disappear. So it's exactly what we just discussed. So, and let's look at the quota Ecuador, right? So, and it is neighbor countries as well. So the vertex is there with a 0 to 1 degree only, with two options. So we have or 0 areas, or we have 0 Libra. So what this means? It means that when a planet is in the transit in the degrees, right? So in those degrees, the local population is having the same transit. It's impossible. They don't have the same tikkun, same corrections. They have completely different purposes. They have a different traits of character. They came to accomplish different things. So this is when we have to be very careful how we assign. I put here very quickly for you to look at that few famous people, the John Kennedy. And John Kennedy have, for example, Vertex, and we can see it's 20, it's almost 20 degrees, which is great. So you can use in his case horizon. You see it's open. This is the rising, the moment he born, right? So he's in Virgo. And we can look at this really interesting. We have here 20, then we have 16 degree, then we have a 17, then we have 22. So you can see how organically it's changed, right? Now we're going to another famous person. So I brought here Albert Einstein. So what's really interesting about his chart, he born in Germany in Ulm. So in his chart, the high latitude it's up to 48 north degree. Okay, so over here we can actually notice here we have 29, 38, then we have 41, and over here we have 20. So look, we jump from 20 to 40 right away. So we didn't have opportunity for 3 or 5 degrees. It jumped much quicker. So in his case, we start to use more verdicts than his rising. Okay, so it's but this is more or less balance. We have in balance, more balance example. So I'm going to show you another example. This is one of my clients I did last week, and she lives in a country, in a South American country. She lives in Venezuela. Actually, she born in Venezuela, but she lives in North America for 25 years. So I still consider the vertex because she lives already in North America for so long. So I'm still looking at vertex a little bit. But you can see in her case, vertex, it's in the fourth house, which is we can really consider. You understand? So this is actually even not supposed to be on the right-hand side. It's supposed to be really on the left, but system still calculated on the left, which can be misleading. So always remember, as soon you see vertex coming out of the fifth house, you're done. You cannot consider vertex. So we only can consider vertex when it comes in fifth, six, seven, 8, and 9. Again, my next video, I'm going to explain how each sign, when they place 12 signs, can be placement in all 5 houses. So I'm going to explain how it affects your sign, how it affects your chart, what is the message for you. And we have to remember again, vertex is so important. When you're able to use it, it's tremendous help to understand your fated events can happen to you, especially on a personal level. I'll give you a quick example. If, for example, your vertex on the fifth houses represent love affairs, and many times you're going to meet someone. It's going almost. It's not somebody you are someone who really cheated or love to cheat, but you're going to have such an urge to connect to this person. And it's not necessarily even on a sexual level. It can be mentor. It can be someone who really teach you a lesson. So it's really important if it's in fifth house, what kind of sign in the fifth house. If, for example, in this case, Pisces, so we have vertex in Pisces. I'm just really, for example, just for you to understand what is the video will be my next one. So, for example, in fifth house, it's represent children as well, right? So you can have some sudden events with your children, and sudden events with someone is a love affair you can meet, and this person, and you're gonna attract fated relationship, someone who really represent Pisces energy, right? And this is something, it's almost unavoidable for you. And what is if you have vertex in Pisces, so anti-vertex you're going to have in Virgo. So it's mean Virgo is going to be very familiar to you, very comfortable. So it's mean you will need to learn how to understand someone who more sensitive, someone who more pursue for different energies, someone who more have so to say not just sensitive, someone who really more deep. And for you, for the practical, you will be more practical and relationship. Again, I'm going to explain more and more in my next video. So just to make my last point for this video, we basically, for us kind of to make peace with this information and to observe this information and to take within, the obvious solution is to use rising as a main calculation point for the countries that are close to equator region. That for sure. But the countries which is closer to the North Pole region, we definitely need to consider more vertex and probably not even consider rising at all. Okay, so I really encourage you to educate yourself in this information available on astronomers' website, Scientific Astronomy. It's really important for us to know. It's a basic foundation how the ecliptic behave, right? And for the next video, we're going to discuss more in depth on astrology side. So right now we touch upon astronomy, and then we're going to discuss more on astrology side, how it's really those fated points affecting us. So I really want to, I hope it wasn't not too confused, and I was really, really trying to simplify for you, especially um, with the formula I create. So I hope this formula can help you really to understand better how the ecliptic and latitudes they change from the south to the north and from the north to the south. Okay, and to justify it, whatever my point. I wish you all of you many many blessings, and looking forward for to share with you more knowledge with my different videos. All the best. Bye bye.